This is Help Wanted, the show that makes your work work for you. I'm Jason Pfeiffer, editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine.
And I'm money expert Nicole Lappin. On Tuesdays, Jason and I answer the helpline and help callers solve their work problems.
And on Thursdays, I give you one way to improve your work and build a career or company you love.
And it starts now.
Are you feeling under pressure right now? You feeling like maybe you're in a situation you're not fully qualified for, or you're surrounded by people who are waiting for you to do something, or they are demanding something, or they just expect you to be something that maybe you're not? Well, okay. If you feel any of that, if you feel under pressure in any way, then I want you to consider the following two statements. Statement number one, people expect things of you. Statement number two, people need things from you. Now, let me ask you something. Are those the same thing? The answer might feel like yes. Yes, it's the same thing. People expect things of me. They need things of me. Same thing. If you're the boss, for example, people expect and need you to be a good boss. If you're on a project, people expect and need you to be a top performer. But you know what? Not actually exactly true. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome or worried that you're not doing a good enough job or afraid that everyone thinks you suck, well, you might be confusing expectation and need. Today, I'm going to help you untangle those things. It's time to ignore what people expect, figure out what they need, and then win them over. And to start, I'm going to share how this thinking transformed the CEO of Whole Foods and changed the course of supermarket history. So in the early days of Whole Foods, co-founder and CEO John Mackey had a problem. The problem was that nobody took him seriously. He had no business background. He looked like a hippie and he did a lot of psychedelics. Many people were mean to him. "You're not like a CEO is supposed to be," one employee told him. A co-founder even named him Wacky Mackey. And John, well, he just kept thinking to himself, how could he be himself while also being the CEO? And then he had a revelation. He told me, "I wasn't trying to be a CEO." And he means that in a good way. John recently told me this when I interviewed him about his insightful new book. It's called The Whole Story. I asked what he meant. How could a CEO not care about being a CEO? And I said, well, how could that be? And he said, well, what he's really doing here is making a distinction between CEO and leader. And of those two, the only one he was interested in was leader. Here's how he explained it.
The CEO is a position of authority. It's a role. You're the person in charge of the company. If you're a CEO, chief executive officer, but you may not be a good leader. You may have just played a good game and you got promoted and you became the CEO, but you're a bad choice because you're really not a leader. And leaders are those who ultimately other people want to follow. A good leader is somebody that inspires people and has integrity and that people trust. And we trust people that have integrity. We trust people we know that are in service to the business, that aren't in it just for themselves, that aren't in it just to make as much money as possible.
All right, so John here is separating CEO and leader. But back to the original point of why I'm telling you this, what John had really done is he had identified the difference between expectation and need. Because it goes like this. People don't always need what they expect. And what's the difference between the two? Well, John is actually a perfect case study. John did not dress or act the way that people expected. But for the sake of argument, let's just imagine that he did. Imagine that John wore a suit and he spoke formally and he never took drugs. He was the ideal CEO. Would that by itself make him a good boss? Would that by itself make Whole Foods successful? The answer is no. That stuff was irrelevant. So what was relevant? That is what John the leader, not just the CEO, John the leader, obsessed over. During his 44 years as, CEO, he thought about how to create a caring, supportive environment. But most importantly, he kept asking himself this.
I was always asking myself this question. What does the company most need me to do now? The reason that's an important question for an entrepreneur, if you have a growing business, the things that I see happen to other entrepreneurs all the time is that, you get good at something. There's something you're really good at, and there's something you really like to do. So you keep doing it because you enjoy it and because you're good at it. And what I found is I had to let go of doing things that I was good at and I enjoyed doing because the company no longer needed me to do that.
John did not care about what people expected. He did care about what they and the company needed. And he also had the courage to know and care about the difference. So now we have picked it apart. The difference between need and expectation. What do people need from you? That's the question you should be obsessing over. And when you start to ask it, questions about expectations actually start to fade away. Because here's the thing. Once you do fulfill people's needs, you can change their expectations. That's what happened with John, right? He didn't meet people's expectations of a CEO, but once he had built a successful company through his leadership, he shaped people's expectations of him as a CEO. Then they expected him to be an eccentric, thoughtful, reliable leader. I remember this happening for me, in fact, at my first magazine job. I was inexperienced and overwhelmed. I didn't talk or dress like my colleagues, and I worried about standing out from them. But did the magazine need me to talk or dress a certain way? No, it needed me to write great and surprising stories. And once I started doing that, everyone embraced me for how I was. Now, think about some of the most important people in your life. Here, we'll tick some off. Number 1, a friend. You developed an unexpectedly strong friendship with someone. Was that the person you expected or the person you needed? Number 2, collaborator. You found an incredible collaborator who helped you achieve things you couldn't do on your own. Was that the person you expected or the person you needed? Number 3, love interest. Let's say you didn't take someone seriously when you began dating, but they became the love of your life. Was that the person you expected or the person you needed? Those relationships worked because expectations are not the same as needs. So here you are, in a new role or doing a new project or in a new relationship, and you're feeling the pressure. Are you an imposter? Are you unprepared? Are you trying to be something that you're not? The answer is just doesn't matter. Wrong questions. The only real question is, do you know what they need? If yes, then act. If no, then find out. Be their solution. Be their hero. Forget the person that they're comparing you against, if they're even comparing you against anybody. If not, forget the person that you're comparing yourself against, because whatever, that person isn't you. When you have what they need, then they will want you and only you, and they will expect and want and need you just the way you are. As longtime listeners of Help Wanted know, that came from my newsletter. It's called One Thing Better. Each week, one way to be more successful and satisfied and build a career or company that you love. I send it out by email, which you can get at onethingbetter.email. Again, that's onethingbetter.email. It's a web address, onethingbetter.email. Or just stay tuned here at Help Wanted because I read them a few weeks later. But a lot of people tell me that they like it in both forms. So anyway, you can decide what you need, and who cares what I expect. Help Wanted is a production of Money News Network. Help Wanted is hosted by me, Jason Pfeiffer.
And me, Nicole Lappin. Our executive producer is Morgan Lavoie. If you want some help? Email our helpline at helpwanted@moneynewsnetwork.com for the chance to have some of your questions answered on the show. And follow us on Instagram at Money News and TikTok at Money News Network for exclusive content and to see our beautiful faces. Maybe a little dance.
Oh, I didn't sign up for that.
All right, well, talk to you soon.